Welcome to English 4E. This is term 2A, and we're working today on class 10. Our assignment today is K17. It's kind of a big one. It's talking about how to use dictionaries and thesauruses. And so we're going to be looking at the concepts of synonyms, antonyms, multiple meanings, and shades of meaning. My name is Jillian Percy, and if you are trying to send in work, please send it to studentwork@nec.on.ca. Please include your full name, the course name, assignment number and name. And if an assignment asks for both a rough and good draft, please label which is which and include them both in the same email. If you need to take a photograph of an assignment, please send it as an attachment rather than in the body of the email. If you have a question about an assignment, the best way to reach me is jillian.percy@nec.on.ca. All right. I don't know why. Oh, yeah, no, it's determined to do that. So for the radio viewers out there, for some reason, Google has decided to consistently log me out when I'm working. And I've tried multiple ways to solve this, but it doesn't want to do it. So just picture beautiful music happening right now as I'm trying to pull things back up. All right. Today's work. Here is a long list of what we're doing. Understand what information a print dictionary gives you, like a real book. Understand how to look up information in a print dictionary. Understand how to look up information in an online dictionary, which is a little tiny bit different. Understand the difference between homophones and homographs. Understand how to use a thesaurus. Understand what synonyms and antonyms are. Understand how to use a thesaurus to find appropriate synonyms and antonyms for your writing. Understand shades of meaning and how it can affect synonym choice, and generate synonyms and antonyms for a given word. Generate sentences that use synonyms or antonyms to replace a given word. Okay, so in Unit 1, here is your introduction to this assignment. It says, access to a good dictionary and thesaurus during this course will definitely improve the quality of your writing. A dictionary will give you the meaning of words you are not familiar with, whether they be nouns, verbs, adjectives, etc. A dictionary can also help you find the correct spelling or give you examples of the word in a sentence. A thesaurus will give you a listing of words with similar meanings to any words you are interested in. Such words are known as synonyms. For example, collect is a synonym of assemble. On the other hand, antonyms are words having the opposite meanings. For example, hot is an antonym of cold. In a variety of workplaces, understanding synonyms and antonyms and being able to use them on occasion is important. Now, there's a line in your unit that I've crossed out, which says, incidentally, homonyms are words that sound alike but have different meanings and spellings. I've crossed that out because there's a lot of controversy over the word of homonyms, and some people think it means one thing, and some people think it means something else. So I'm going to just eliminate it here, and we will talk about it when I get to homophones and homographs, okay? When you are creating some written pieces of your own, a thesaurus is really useful. It will add both variety and quality to your work. So these are both useful resources. We want to make sure you understand how to use them because a lot of times it's easy to skip over using them when we're in a hurry. Okay, so the online version is really easy, although my personal feeling is I don't think it's quite as thorough as using a print dictionary, but I'm going to show it to you because I think it's what a lot of people are going to use. If you enter the phrase online dictionary into your search engine, this is what came up on my screen. So you'll see the very first one is kind of a generic one. If you look right under the search bar, you'll see some that are specific though. The Oxford Dictionary, the Webster Dictionary. Those two are super reliable, okay? Cambridge, yeah. Scramble would be Scrabble if you're playing Scrabble. If you have a specific dictionary you want to use, you could put up the name into your search engine. I would say Oxford or Webster are really strong. I wouldn't just use the generic one, but you certainly can. Um, when you're using a dictionary, you do want to make sure it's a reliable dictionary. There is also something called an urban dictionary out there, which I was checking out. It's more meant to give you ideas about what a new slang word means. It is a little bit over the top sometimes, though, so I wouldn't use it as a dictionary for just ordinary words. All right. So different online dictionaries may show you different information. So when I looked up the word commodious under the Merriam-Webster online dictionary, here's what shows up. It gives you the word. It tells you what part of speech it is. It's an adjective. Then it breaks it into syllables, and then it shows you how to pronounce it. There's also a little sound button there, which means if you wanted to, you could press on that and you could hear somebody say it, which is, I think, a really useful way to do it. In blue, it says synonyms of commodious. They aren't right there, but if I wanted to click on that, it would take me to the synonym page. Then it gives me the definition. Now you have to just kind of know that because it doesn't say definition here. Comfortably or conveniently spacey. And then in bright blue letters, it says roomy. Roomy is a synonym for commodious. Then they give you an example, a commodious closet. Then they give you a second meaning. It says here archaic. Archaic means really old. That means it isn't a current meaning. Most people who use the word commodious mean roomy. But if you were reading, say, an older novel for a course in school, they might use it in the old-fashioned or archaic usage, and then it's helpful to know that. So in archaic usage, it sometimes also meant handy or serviceable. And then it shows you some of the other formats based on the base word here. Commodiously, commodiousness. Those are both kind of awkward. I don't think they get used very often, but they're there. And then here is the Collins online dictionary. I found this one really confusing at first because what you see is this section, which actually doesn't have a definition. For some strange reason, they put their example first, and then there's a giant ad, and then underneath that, you found the definition. Perfectly reasonable definition. I just found it surprisingly hard to find. So same thing. It shows you how to pronounce it. They do their pronunciation guide a little bit different. I'm more used to the way Webster does theirs, where they break it into syllables, but they do also have the little sound button where you could hit that and hear how it sounds. They give you an example. A commodious room or house is large and has a lot of space. Or there were snowmen, snow dogs, and a commodious igloo. So a roomy igloo. And then down here, oh, interesting. The word pronunciation is slightly different. So in America and possibly Canada, it would sound like this. In Britain, and again, possibly Canada, because sometimes we go one way or the other, it sounds a little bit different. So that's helpful too, because, you know, who knows who's looking this up, right? Again, tells you the part of speech. It's adjective. The first meaning is of buildings or rooms, large and roomy and spacious. And then again, they show you the archaic meaning, which for them, they've got suitable or convenient. It's not quite the same as handy or serviceable to me. And then they're showing you some of the derived forms, commodiously, which is the adverb, or commodiousness as the noun. So if you were looking up a word, that probably is enough. I just kind of found the print dictionary a lot more useful. If you haven't, this depends on how young you are. When I was in school, we absolutely spent time learning how to use a dictionary and guide words and all that kind of thing. It was a big part of like grade 6, 7, 8. But I don't know if they really teach that as much anymore. So I have a little video here, which talks about how to look things up in a print dictionary, which, like I said, I think it is important because it does have a little bit more information. And if you're not familiar with it, it can be frustrating to try and use one. There's a lot of short forms that they assume you understand. And if you don't, it's a little bit tricky. So here is the video on how to use a dictionary. This is put out by Merriam-Webster, since they're kind of the people that do that. Come on up. Why is it not wanting to come? There we go.
A dictionary is filled with entries, and each entry contains information about a particular word. These entries are arranged in alphabetical order. So let's say you're looking for the word ripple. First, you'll find the section with all the words that begin with R. Then you'll use the guide words at the top of each page to find the page with the entry for Ripple. This page has rink and rivalry as its guide words. Since the RIP of Ripple comes after the RIN of rink and before the RIV of rivalry, we know that this is the page Ripple is on. You'll find a lot of information about Ripple, including how it's spelled. Some words can be spelled more than one way. At the entry for racket, for example, you'll see RACKET as the main head word, as well as the variant spelling, RACQUET. This dot between the P's in Ripple shows you where you can divide the word with a hyphen if it doesn't all fit in one line when you're writing it down. Dictionaries also tell us how to say a word with its pronunciation. There are some familiar letters here, as well as some special symbols that represent specific sounds. You can find out what these symbols mean by looking at the key on the bottom of each page. Hyphens separate the word's syllables. As you can see, Ripple has 2 syllables. The marks at the top or bottom of some parts of the pronunciation tell you that those syllables are stressed or given more emphasis when spoken. The first syllable of Ripple is stressed, so we say ripple, not ripple. Every word has a job or function in a sentence, which we call a part of speech. A word can be a noun, verb, adjective, adverb, pronoun, preposition, conjunction, article, or interjection. In some dictionaries, the part of speech for each entry is listed as an abbreviation, like N for noun, VB for verb, and ADJ for adjective. Now, have you ever seen 2 words that are spelled the same way but have different meanings? These are called homographs. In this dictionary, each homograph has a separate entry. Their headwords look the same, except for a small number just before it. Ripple has 2 homographs. One is a noun, as in, there is a ripple on the water, and one is a verb, as in, the wind made the water ripple. Because they're both pronounced the same, only the first homograph gets a pronunciation. Many words have more than one form. For example, most nouns have a plural form. 1 ripple, 2 ripples. Verbs can also have different forms. The water ripples. Water is rippling. Water rippled. Adjectives and adverbs can too. Your dictionary will always show you the verb forms and adjective and adverb forms, but it only shows forms for nouns when they don't follow the regular add-s or es noun pattern. So, there's no plural form at the entry for the noun ripple, but at the entry for mouse, you'll see the plural form mice. Now let's look at the definition. It follows a bold colon and tells you what the word means. The verb ripple has 2 meanings. Down at the bottom of this page, the definition for the word rivalry is followed by the word competition in capital letters. The capital letters tell you that competition and rivalry are synonyms. The 2 words mean the same thing. Definitions are often followed by examples of the word in use to help you understand the meanings and how they're used. Some dictionary entries have other features too. A note or label might tell you that a word is usually capitalized when used with a particular meaning, or that a spelling of a word is more common in British English, or that a word is always used in its plural form. At the end of some entries, you'll see other words in dark, heavy type that don't have definitions. These are words that are formed by adding a suffix to the main entry. At the end of the entry for proud, for example, you'll find the word proudly. The suffix ly is defined as in a specified manner. So proudly means in a proud manner. Sometimes you'll find a phrase in dark, heavy type at the end of an entry. Here at make are make believe, make fun of, and make good. These are called run-on phrases. The entry's headword is the first major word for this kind of phrase, but not necessarily the first word. Some entries have a paragraph about the synonyms of the word. Price, for example, has a synonym paragraph that helps explain the differences between the words price, charge, and cost, which all share a meaning. The word synonym in dark type at the entries for charge and cost direct you to the paragraph at price. Many words in English come from older words in Latin or Greek. Those words are called word roots. Here at the entry for primary, there's a paragraph about how the Latin word primus, meaning first, gave us the root prim, which led to the words primary, primeval, and primitive. At the entries for primeval and primitive, you'll find the word root in red, pointing you to the word root paragraph at primary.
Okay, so I know that was extremely detailed, but I really thought they did an excellent job of explaining.
A dictionary is filled with
Hang on a second.
entries.
Of explaining all the different ins and outs of using a dictionary. So a lot of people are used to using dictionaries to check spelling, but you can use dictionaries for so many more things: to check the pronunciation of unfamiliar words, to check on the spelling of words, especially if you add a suffix or a prefix. I think the other day we were talking about when to add, when you need to double a consonant when you're adding a suffix and that kind of thing. If you're not sure, if you check the dictionary, it'll tell you to explain what part of speech it is, including if it can be more than one part. And sometimes if it's a different part of speech, then it has a different meaning, right? To explain all the different possible meanings of the word. Sometimes we don't realize that a word like run, for example, might have a lot of different meanings that we're so used to hearing, we automatically adjust in our head. But if it's a word that's unfamiliar to you, like run is obviously familiar to everybody, but a more complicated word might also have different possible meanings, but we're used to only hearing it one way. So that kind of helps you with those kind of things. I also like that most dictionaries will give you an example of the word in a sentence to help you understand it in context, and it will help you understand the difference between two homophones and two homographs, which we're going to talk about next. She did talk a little bit about this. A homograph will be spelled exactly the same way, but it will have a different meaning. Sometimes they sound exactly the same too. Sometimes they don't. There's two different kinds. So you have to pay attention to how they are used in the sentence to understand which meaning is being used. For example, the little brown bat flew into the cave. I'm talking about the little animal. The baseball player threw the bat down. I'm talking about the big stick. I saw you at the store yesterday. I used my eyes and looked over, and there you were. My dad is using his new saw to build a shed. So that's a tool that's very sharp, like a knife. I am trying to train my dog to do tricks, trying to teach him, basically. My auntie left on a train to Winnipeg. That kind of train is, a long stream of cars hooked together. We saw a beautiful white crane by the lake. In this case, I'm talking about the bird. The crane was lifting the windows up high. In that case, I'm talking about the construction machine called a crane. So you can see how these are some very simple ones, but a word that sounds the same could actually have two completely different meanings. And that's called a homograph in English. Now, they don't always sound exactly the same. So here is one where I'm going to put the two words together and you're going to hear me pronounce them differently. So like the farmer is going to produce some new leafy produce on his farm. So produce there is make, produce is like vegetables. Since you are close, can you please close the gate? The first close is near. Close is the action of shutting something. The lawyer said, I object to you bringing that irrelevant object into the courtroom. So object as in protest, object as in a thing. When she heard her wedding dress tear on the nail, the tears began to fall down her face. So here, tear like a rip, here, tears like the water from your eyes. I had to console my little brother when he broke his new game console. So here, console like comfort, here, console like the equipment you're playing your game on. All right. Oh, I'm missing something. All right, maybe it'll come up later. What is a homophone? Homophones sound the same to our ear. If somebody was using them in a sentence talking to us, they sound exactly the same. But if you write them down, they look different and they will have different meanings. So some example of homophones would be right, R-I-G-H-T, or right, R-I-T-E. So the first one, take a right turn at the gray house. It's a direction. The second one, the priest gave him the last rites. In that case, rites are like a ceremony. Here we've got meet and meet. One is spelled with EE, one is spelled EA. I can't wait to meet your dad. In other words, to see him for the first time. Mom was cutting up moose meat, the kind of stuff you eat. And here we have rain, R-A-I-N, versus rain, R-E-I-G-N. So the first one, I don't want the rain to come, is the water from the sky. The second one, the king will reign the country till he dies. In that one, he's going to rule over the country till he dies. Now, these are the kind of spelling mistakes that your computer spell checker may not catch, which I've warned people about, but they don't always believe me. So there's a very famous kind of silly poem that uses these kind of homophones to show you some of the problems with spell checkers, okay? It's a little bit hard to read. The original version of this poem was written by Gerald H. Czar in 1992. Now, if you have certain kind of spell checker, it is not going to find the spelling mistakes, even though there's multiple spelling mistakes in each line. If you just kind of quickly look at my page, you can see it only caught 4 of the mistakes. And yet every single line has multiple mistakes. Take a look for a second and just see if you can read like the first couple of lines. If you read it word for word, it makes sense, but it plays with your brain a little bit because our brain knows that when I see that word, it doesn't mean the same thing that they're using it to mean in the sentence. So let me show you what I mean. I have a spelling checker. It came with my PC. It plainly marks for my review mistakes I cannot see. I strike the keys and type a word and wait for it to say whether I am right or wrong. It tells me straight away. I ran this poem through it. You're sure real glad to know it's very polished in its way. My checker told me so. A checker is a blessed thing. It frees you loads of time. It helps me write all styles of writing and aids me when I rhyme. Each phrase come poised up on my screen. I trust to be a jewel. The checker pores o'er every word to check some spelling rule. All right, that's really hard to read because your brain doesn't want to, like, it doesn't make sense. But you can see there are so many mistakes here, probably 8 to 10 per paragraph, and it only caught 4. So it's a great example of homophones, but also a great example of why you can't rely 100% on your spell checker, okay? Now, moving on to using a thesaurus. A thesaurus can help us find alternate and more interesting words. And writers especially use them all the time because sometimes as we're writing or we're scrambling to finish a writing assignment, our mind can go blank, right? We're so busy, we've got so much going on up there. We've used the same word over and over, and we know we should change it, but we can't quite think of a new one to put in its place. This is the time where I usually drive my husband crazy and ask, hey, can you think of another word for? But instead of driving the people around us crazy, we can also use the handy tool called a thesaurus. So let's say you are trying to describe a city scene and you keep using the word buildings, 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 and it doesn't really bring any specific picture to mind. You can't keep using the word building in all your sentences. So what does the thesaurus suggest? Take a look here. In the dark orange are the ones that they suggest are the most useful. And then you've got the medium orange that might be useful. And then you have in the very, very light, pale, peachy kind of orange, words that are somewhat similar but might not be considered a true synonym. So when I looked at this one, I copied down some of the ideas. Structure, edifice, tower, skyscraper. If you read my screen carefully, I'm sorry for my radio friends out there, I'm not going to read them. There's one or two there that you might not want to use in your writing because it means one thing to some people, but to modern ears might sound a little bit risque and would not suggest the idea of a building. Now, I also began to check some other online thesaurus sites, and some of them had different synonyms. So some of the other possibilities that came up were monument, high rise, monolith, architecture, design, development, creation, complex, or facility. I guarantee you I could not have thought of most of those on my own. It just was not coming to mind. And yet, once I've got that list in front of me, if I'm working on a paragraph or even like an entire essay, I could go through and carefully use some of those where it seems like I've used the word building over and over again, and it's beginning to kind of grate on your ear, right? Just like if somebody's saying the same word over and over again, picture your toddler in the back seat saying the same word over and over. It can be annoying. When you're reading and somebody uses the same word over and over, it can have the same effect. So throwing in some different words that are synonyms can be really helpful to your reader. Okay. If a word has multiple meanings, be sure to use a synonym for the right meaning. So, for example, the word charge, which to me, I can think of two obvious meanings. I think of, hey, charge it for my on my credit card, or I think of charge like somebody's going to run forward and attack somebody. But when I looked it up in the thesaurus, you can see as a noun, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different possible meanings. And as a verb, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 possible meanings. So if I was trying to look up a synonym for charge, I have to kind of think, well, how did I mean it in my sentence? Because if I meant it as what is the cost of something, but I accidentally look up the synonym for assaulting somebody, I'm not going to have a synonym for the way I meant it, right? It is a synonym for the word, but it's not a synonym that's going to hang on to the same meaning. So you need to be cautious of that when you're using a thesaurus. So here's just two examples from the thesaurus. For the first one, I've written the sentence, the police are going to charge him with murder. And here are all the different synonyms that came up for that meaning of charge. Accuse, indict, blame, prosecute, incriminate, all those kind of words that might come up that mean the same kind of concept as what I mean in my sentence. Over here, I mean something different. Please put our lunch on the charge account. So here are my synonyms that have that same kind of meaning of cost, expense, cost, expenditure, outlay, pocket money, all of those kind of things. It's not, it seems like it's not a big thing, but it could give an unintentionally funny effect if you're, or confusing effect, if you pull up the wrong type of synonym. So Be mindful of that when you're looking things up in the thesaurus. Okay. The other thing, synonyms are alike, but they're not exactly alike. Okay. We need to be cautious when using synonyms to help improve our writing. When you look in the thesaurus, like we just saw, many words will have multiple synonyms, but they don't mean exactly the same thing. So just picking any one of them at random to substitute might give you some misunderstanding of your sentence for your reader. So here's an example. Let's say you're writing a paragraph for your teacher and you want to explain how hot the temperature is. You check the thesaurus and you grab a word at random. Fervid. Fervid is a synonym for hot. And then you proceed to write this sentence into your paragraph. He felt so hot on that summer day by the pool as he talked to Barbara. And I don't want to use the word hot, so instead, I write the word fervid there. Fervid. However, we've got a small problem because your teacher knows that fervid means intensely enthusiastic and passionate. So now I don't know, is he feeling hot because it's a summer day? Or do I mean that he's got an undying love for the postman? So because there's an unintentional meaning to that synonym, be cautious when you're choosing a synonym, especially if it's one you've never heard anybody use before. Okay. I know that sounds unnecessarily limiting, but I know myself, I've occasionally used a word that I read somewhere but didn't really understand. And then it ends up feeling a little bit weird when somebody kind of catches you on that one. All right. The other concept is, and it's related, is the idea of shades of meaning. Several words may all be loosely synonyms with each other. However, they may have a slightly different sense of intensity. For example, if we take some words for cold, which one of these words seems least cool and which one seems most cool to you? So if we want to put them in order from least cold to most cold, here are our possibilities. Glacial, chilly, cool, nippy, icy, freezing, crisp, bracing, Arctic, and frigid. So I'm going to start with the opposite end. Which do you think is the most cold? Just looking at those to me, I would say either glacial or Arctic. So I'm going to put, hang on, can I put it down here? Okay. I'm going to go down to the end here and say, for some reason to me, glacial is slightly less cold than Arctic. Hang on, Arctic. Now, this is one of the other things with synonyms. I may have a personal meaning attached to a word, and yours might be slightly different. And that's okay, as long as they're not so different that we have a misunderstanding. So those would be my two that are the most cold. What would be least cold? I feel like cool is not too, maybe crisp. If I said it's a really crisp day, I would mean there's a little tiny bit of a cool, but it's not too cool. So I'm going to start with crisp and then move on to cool. So what else have I got there? I've got chilly, nippy. That would be like, say it's to me anyways, a day in the fall where I go out and I thought I was okay. And then oh, it's a little bit nippy out there. And I go in and put a jacket on because it's just a little bit cold, almost like the wind's kind of biting you or nipping at you. And then we've got icy, freezing, and bracing that I haven't used. Huh. Freezing is actually to me a kind of mild temperature. I don't know if it would be if I was living down south, but up here I would say it's not that cold, right? Um, bracing. Bracing and freezing. What else have I got? Oh, chilly. I would say chilly is there. And maybe icy is between chilly and glacial. And then I've got bracing. And now looking at these, I don't think of bracing as being too cold either. it makes me think of, again, a fall day. I'm not thinking of a winter day when I say bracing. So here is my shades of meaning. You might put those same words in a slightly different order. But if I wanted to say, oh, it was a crisp fall day, and I'm meaning slightly cold, I wouldn't want to use the synonym Arctic because then somebody might be picturing, you know, the tundra up north in Canada where, the sun's not out and it's super, super cold. I'm giving them a different picture if I don't use the right synonym that has the right type of meaning. So that's another thing to be careful of with certain types of synonyms. Not all of them have that, but it's not uncommon either. Okay. How does all this affect your writing? Okay, this is kind of what we were talking about. Let's say I'm trying to convey that a family's outside and there's a very light wind, but I accidentally choose a synonym and say, Mom and my sister picked flowers as a blustering wind rustled through the trees. Blustering's an odd choice there because in my mind, I now have this very comical picture of mom and sister trying to pick flowers as their hats are flying off and their hair is whipping around and the flowers are falling apart in their hands because it's too strong a synonym. Instead, I might want something more like mom and my sister picked flowers as a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. That kind of gives a more accurate picture of what I was aiming for. Okay. Sorry, guys, it's taking a little bit longer than I thought. You can also use a thesaurus to look up antonyms. Antonyms are words that mean the opposite of each other. And we use them all the time. Some very simple ones would be things like black, white, cold, hot, small, big, happy, sad, truth, lie, beautiful, and ugly. However, for words that are more complicated in meaning, sometimes the antonym could be a little bit harder to think of or might even be controversial. So the opposite of monarchy, somebody has as democracy. Someone else might think maybe it should have been anarchy or something. Then the opposite of endangered might be protected. The opposite of frugal might be lavish. The opposite of unique might be common. The opposite of terrain might be sky. Terrain is like the earth. Someone else might have said the water instead. So some antonyms are very obvious and everybody would kind of say the same ones, but the more complicated the word is and the meaning of the word, the less you can guarantee everybody's going to have the same antonym in their mind. Okay. Remember how we talked about that words have multiple meanings? When you are looking up an antonym, you have to be careful that you're finding one that is the actual opposite of the meaning you're thinking of. Some thesauri may not make it obvious which antonyms belong to which meanings, but others may not make it very clear. If you ever look up a word and you've never heard or seen it before, I really strongly advise you not to use it until it is a word that you're more familiar with, at least in your writing. Maybe start using it in conversation and see how it goes and how people react to it. Because sometimes too, there's a word that in the dictionary sounds like it means one thing, but in real life, it's kind of developed its own meaning that is slightly different than the dictionary. Okay, so here's shades of meaning in antonyms. Let's say we're talking about the word calm, okay? And it is used as an adjective. There's two possible choices here, peaceful and quiet for an inanimate object or composed and cool for an animate object, okay? Now, here are some of the synonyms it gave me. Agitated, excited, harsh, nervous, rough, uncool, violent. Let's say I was trying to talk about a calm day. None of those words really 100% grab what I was aiming for. If I wanted to say the opposite of a calm day, I wouldn't want to say a nervous day, even though that's theoretically what should be there. It doesn't quite make sense. Angry, excitable, frenzied, fierce. Now, stormy would work for me, or a turbulent day might work. But see how I mean, like, not all those antonyms would actually work if I was trying to compare a calm day versus a stormy day. So here's my example, like last Sunday, the wind was calm and the temperature was mild, but today is freezing and the wind is, I would say turbulent might be a good one, or maybe, like I said, stormy. I could say violent. Violent might work if the wind is so strong, it's like knocking tree branches over. But you see what I mean, where you have to be a little bit careful. Okay, so then in our book, question number 17 has a whole bunch of different parts. So we're going to look at them. But if we happen to run out of time, it's right there in your unit. But I just wanted to kind of show you how to do some of them because I didn't think they were all 100% obvious. So question number 17 is using a thesaurus. Add two synonyms for each of the following words. So for example, the word big, I could put gigantic and enormous. For small, I could put teeny tiny or minute. The words they want you to find synonyms for are first, last, and proceed. Question number 2, give a synonym for each of the following words, and then use each synonym in a sentence. And they've completed an example for you. Here, the example is the word is said, a synonym is claimed, and then using it in a sentence, I claimed that I had received the check for $50 in the mail. They want you to do the same thing with the word truthful, and then the same thing with the word fix. Okay, question number 3. Use antonyms of the bold-faced words below to complete these sentences. And they completed one example for you. They gave you kind of the sentence beginning. We started the season as champions. And then they want you to find an antonym for the word started. So they chose the word finished and used that to complete the sentence. We started the season as champions, but finished out of the playoffs. So here are your sentence starters. We quickly boarded the airplane. The story had a sad beginning. See, we must succeed in finishing our assignment. So you have to finish the sentence, but use the antonym to the bolded word. Number 4, write sentences using the following pair of antonyms. And those are worth 2 marks. For example, hot and cold. I couldn't believe how hot it was outside. My office at work was so cold due to the air conditioning being so high. You can put it in the same sentence if you want, or you can do it in 2 sentences like I did. And the words they want you to use for that are smile, frown, and fast, slow. Number 5, rewrite the following lines using antonyms to give the opposite meaning. And the first sentence has already been done for you as an example. So here is their little paragraph. I was satisfied with my pay. It was the most my employer would give me. With it, I can buy almost anything I want. And then they give you the example. They transformed, see this very first sentence, I was satisfied with my pay. They took that and they picked which word they wanted to use the antonym to give the sentence the opposite meaning. So they said, I was dissatisfied with my pay. So they kept the rest of the sentence the same. They just changed that one word. The hard part is they're not telling you which word you should try to change in the antonym. You have to kind of look at it and figure out which word in that sentence would make the most sense that I could try and change. So that one was one I thought was a little bit tricky. Here is an example. If I said, I was so happy about the conversation I had with my boyfriend, and I wanted to change it to mean the opposite, what word would I choose to change? I would say happy because it's the easiest one I can think of. If I changed happy, I could turn it into, I'm just going to add it here, the word sad. Okay, I had borrowed $10,000 from my parents. So what word could I change to give the opposite meaning? I could say, okay, here I've borrowed it. The opposite might be I gave, I lent. If I said something like I had lent $10,000 to my, I'd have to change from into to, because from implies coming from, to implies giving to. So that's one way I could do it. After a long day at work, I love to come home and clean house. What would be the easiest way to change that sentence to mean the opposite? I would pick love. I could easily turn love into the word hate. And now you've got, after a long day at work, I hate to come home and clean house. Okay, I think you've got the idea. I'm going to move on now. Number 6, give a homophone for each of the following words. An example has been completed for you. So and so. They want you to give a homophone for bear, wear, hire, right, your, missed, plain, and him. Okay. If you're not sure, you can check your dictionary thesaurus and see if they can help you out. Number 7, use each of the homophones in a sentence. So week and week, use them both in a sentence in a way that conveys what they mean. They have 2 different meanings, right? They're spelled differently because they mean something different. Same thing for the next batch, Sunday versus Sunday. And again, if you're not sure what they mean, check the dictionary and they will help give you some ideas. Okay, well, we're doing pretty good. Okay, that is the end of that particular assignment. See if I have, this is kind of interesting. It was just talking about how words get added to the dictionary, because of course, dictionaries were written originally just by one person. Now it'd be like a team of people, but you can see just from looking at the different ways that the online dictionaries organize things, it's not like we're 100% always in agreement as to what word means what. See if we have a little bit of time for this one. Probably won't get finished the whole thing, but here it is.
Dictionary, noun, a malevolent literary device for cramping the growth of a language and making it hard and inelastic. Lexicographer, noun, a writer of dictionaries, a harmless drudge. While the concept of a dictionary dates back to ancient civilizations, the first English dictionary was published by Robert Cowdrey in 1604. In the centuries that followed, many more dictionaries were written by individual authors who chose what to include or exclude. They not only defined words, they openly showcased their creators' opinions, like Ambrose Bierce's definition of dictionary and Samuel Johnson's definition of lexicographer. After their authors' deaths, many of these dictionaries quickly became outdated, but one 19th century dictionary had a different fate. In 1828, American lawyer and author Noah Webster published an American Dictionary of the English Language with a lofty goal: to give the United States its own version of the English language. He believed that as a new nation, the United States needed its own distinct version of English to assert its independence from Britain. In his dictionary, Webster sought to describe and officialize the way Americans spoke. Most dictionaries in Webster's time were prescriptive. They dictated how words should be used, rather than documenting the way people actually used language in daily life. When Webster broke this convention and included slang words in his dictionary, critics accused him of polluting the English language. But he argued that these words captured local variations of language, a vital part of what made American English unique. He also believed spelling rules were unnecessarily complex. and that we should write the way we speak as much as possible. Still, Webster's own opinions influenced the words he included and the way he defined them. He excluded slang words from Black communities because he didn't consider them proper. And when he defined woman, he added that women are soft, mild, pitiful, and flexible. By the time of his death, Noah Webster was a household name. Seeing a lucrative business opportunity, brothers George and Charles Merriam bought the rights to Webster's dictionary. Together with Webster's son-in-law, the Merriams made a new, revised edition. It was the beginning of the Merriam-Webster Dictionary.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it there. The reason I wanted to include that was so you could see something really important, which is a lot of times, at least when I was in school, the dictionary was just presented like it's sprung full blown in the library and no human ever had anything to do with it. But you can see one thing they're addressing is because these definitions are being written by people, people bring their own prejudices, stereotypes, and it affects what words they put in there. It affects how they define things. So that is one thing to be cautious of when you're reading a dictionary. They try to overcome that these days by having a team of people write a dictionary rather than just one person write a dictionary. But it is still something to be mindful of if you're reading a definition and something about it doesn't sit quite right. You don't have to use that. You can check a different dictionary. You can lodge a protest with the dictionary people. I just want you to be mindful. They are not set in stone. They are not the final and only authority. They have flaws and can have mistakes as well. All right. Thank you so much for coming out today. Today is Thursday, so there is not a class tomorrow. I will see you again on Monday. If you're having any trouble, by all means, please reach out to me on Facebook or email, and I'd be happy to help you. Okay? Good luck and have a nice weekend.